Good morning. I'm going to welcome you to our commission meeting and call it to order. I'll note for the record that we do have a quorum. Commissioner Benninga is absent. Just a reminder, silence your cell phones, and if you're going to speak today, public input or on any of the agenda items, please sign in. We need your name for public record. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Look for a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Moving on, consent agenda. Anybody from the public that would like to comment on any items on the consent agenda? Any commissioner that would like to remove any items from the consent agenda? I just have one comment on the consent agenda. We, not maybe public knowledge, but we send cards out to significant anniversaries for employees that on their anniversary of the employment with the county. And there's just on these few cards here, there's well over 200 years of experience working for the county. It's a significant thing. And just thank you to all the employees and congratulate them on their anniversaries, 20s, and I think there were 5 25-year anniversaries with the county. So pretty cool. All right. Look for a motion to approve our consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion a second. Please call the roll.
Blyenberg,
Aye.
Heisey,
Aye.
Karski,
Aye.
and Kipley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on then to our regular business. We have a motion to issue a proclamation declaring March 15th, 2025 as St. Patrick's Day in Minnehaha County. And we have a familiar face that's now retired, and congratulations on your status as Grand Marshal of the parade. Morning, Sean.
Good morning, all. Top of the morning to y'all, County Commission. So I'd like to introduce, after 10 years of being the chair of the Parade Committee 2, we passed the shillelagh to Mr. Ryan Murphy. So Mr. Ryan Murphy will be reading our proclamation this morning, and we appreciate the long tenure of support of the proclamation for the parade. So, Ryan.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone. So it reads, Proclamation, St. Patrick's Day of the Minnehaha County, March 15th, 2025. Whereas we be Irish men and women all this day of national celebration at home in Ireland and in homelands throughout the world. And whereas the joyous unity of St. Patrick's Day reminds us of all of our shared heritage and membership in a global family. And whereas today we honor the patron saint of Ireland of his great message of love and peace into one another. And whereas celebrations are in order for an expression of culture and heritage in music, dance, poetry, games, and a wee bit of green beer raised in a toast. And whereas green silliness abounds as you shed your troubles by the road for a chance of good cheer and a wearing of the green. And then this we proclaim, as leprechauns are a-dancing in the joy that's everywhere, with luck as your companion. From deep in our hearts, we treasure our strong community spirit and traditional welcome and care for one another. And thank God for the Irish, who gave us St. Pat to bring us together, a wearing of the green hat. Then shout and proclaim this 15th day of March as St. Patrick's Day in Minnehaha County, dated this 4th of the merry month of March, 2025. Thank you all. That's a wonderful blessing from you. And we invite you all, if you want to join us Saturday, March 15th, obviously, we'll read this again at the proclamation, the painting of the Shamrock at 11 o'clock at First National Bank in the lobby there. And we're going to have some fun. 45th annual. Sean, obviously, he's been an amazing ambassador for us, and we owe him a lot. So thank you so much today.
Thank you, gentlemen. Public comment on this agenda item. Commission?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor should say, "Oh, aye."
Oh, aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Thank you. Minnehaha County Emergency Medical Services 2024 year-end summary and fourth quarter report. Dr. Luther. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dr. Jeff Luther. I'm the Quality Assurance Director for the EMS Primary Service Ambulance Districts, and I'm here to give my report today. Commentary, I love St. Patrick's Day, but being of German, heritage, it takes us a month to get it out of our system, so thank God for October. Anyways, I'd like to go through first with the year-end report. Commissioner Heisey, I don't know if he or you're aware of kind of some of this, and if I took a second or two to kind of bring him up to speed. And Chairman Karski, you just have to let me know if I know last year, Commissioner Bender, there was a stage hook that coming. I tended to go on, so I apologize. And a lot of information quickly, but for sake of Commissioner Heisley, several years ago, ambulance districts were formed. At that point, it was designed to have an established set of boundaries where these ambulance services could respond, and with that came a lot of different things, including an ordinance that was placed, and that led to some funding and some more standardization, I think, with respect to how EMS is and was back then, and some comments about it. Back then, it was all volunteer and at the basic level. I'll be using some acronyms today. BLS is basic life support. ALS is advanced life support. PCR is patient care record, but feel free to stop me if none of that doesn't make any sense. But where we've come from back then, which is, 20 years ago or plus, and now we've got good boundaries, and we've got advanced life support that's in these districts now, which changes how I do quality assurance. With a basic level, which is very, very important, that first 120 seconds of an emergency, most of what we all do with whatever level of training is at the basic level. To now, we've got lots of technology at our fingertips. We're able to gather information quickly. We have collaborative efforts through mutual aid agreements and automatic aid. But that's kind of just in a nutshell. But if we look at how the system works, everything starts with a 911 call. And the 911 call is based on what's called priority dispatch. And depending on the nature of the call, what and who goes, particularly in the city. But in the county, which is different, I oversee in the city limits too, which is a different animal, kind of, but in the end, we're all responding to take care of folks. So, having said that, I'll start with the year-end summary, and then I'll go into the fourth quarter in a little bit more detail. And again, I apologize if there's anything too involved. Just stop me, and we'll explain, or we'll go forward and not gloss over it, but because some of the slides will speak for themselves. But if we look at call volume in and of itself, it continues to go up, but so does our population. It's a little more staggering in the city than it is in the county, but we have seen a slight increase in several types of calls, kind of consistent with the growth that we see in the county itself. Some of the things that we look at for the call types, and we break those down. Interesting, some of the calls that were up include transfer calls, because some of these primary service areas, their communities are deeply involved in transfers, a lot of nursing home work. Sick person, that's a generalization that's based on the call taker's impression from the requesting party of what catalog that goes into. Lift assist, unconscious patients, breathing problems were all up a bit. Law enforcement and fire standby calls were up as well. One of the big changes in '24 has been the oversight of our providers. EMTs whether it's be a basic, advanced, or paramedic, are all under the auspices of one body or another. Well, historically, the EMTs were under the Office of EMS at the Department of Health. They now have been transferred for their licensing requirements to the Board of Medical and Osteopathic Examiners. They formed an advisory committee, and I've been a liaison for the Board of Medical and Osteopathic Examiners for several years, but that changed in '24 due to statutory changes in input, where now the EMTs are in with the paramedics. As a quality assurance guy, to me, it's more work for somebody and less work for somebody. But one of the interesting changes is that now, and again through statutory change, we require certification for ambulance drivers. That's new. Typically, when you're trained as an EMT or a paramedic, you get this EVOC or training to, and so you're qualified to drive an ambulance. And if you look at the rural setting, a lot of people could potentially drive the ambulance because of the nature of who's there and what service is helping out. But now there's a requirement that you have to be certified. So if for firefighters who have driven the ambulances lots of times to help out, we'll have to seek this certification. So that's something new. I think, am I running that?
If you want to scroll, you can, otherwise she can scroll
Okay.
for you.
Can I go back?
Yep.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Okay, because usually that's how it goes, but I just wanted to get caught. Here's the year-end slide. It's a pie chart. Again, it's a response breakdown by category, and you can see that the majority of what all of us do is medically related. You can see the gray, that's the transfers. And this is kind of typical with all systems. Trauma is in yellow. And then standbys, and I talked a little bit about that. I'll dive a little deeper if we've got time in that. This is the year-end part of that. And again, we break down in the instant type of breakdown, so you can kind of see what we're seeing out there. Again, transfer is kind of the number one. Sick person is a category that could mean just about anything because the requesting party may not explain to the call taker exactly what's going on. So it's lumped into this sick call, or sick person rather, and then that's dispatched accordingly. So we don't know often until we're on scene and we assess exactly what's going on. And it goes down to everything that you can imagine is included in this. Now, I talked about PCRs submitted, patient care record. The other thing that has changed over the years is the state uses ImageTrend, which is an electronic medical record that the services use. It is awesome compared to what it used to be because I'd have to collect these handwritten charts, and to thumb through those, it was quite a process. So anyways, we can see that through each quarter since 2021, there's a baseline, there's an average of PCRs that are submitted and reviewed. The ones that I count or review, and again, per my job, based on an agreement with the county, is I look at the pediatric calls, trauma calls, cardiac arrest, and I do a random selection of 25% calls. That standard, I think, is probably a bit outdated with ImageTrend because I can mow through them relatively quickly and I can categorize them quickly. This just showed a spike that we had in one of the quarters of PCRs, which can happen. Again, I had talked to the ones that I review each quarter that I have to review, so I filter out cardiac arrest, pediatric, trauma, and then we have ST, elevated MI, they call that STEMI, that's a heart attack or stroke, and then the random selections. One of the focuses that I really look at is our cardiac arrest because we measure lots of different quality improvement indicators for cardiac arrest. And then if we look at what we did in our response to cardiac arrest calls in the quarter, Lucas device, this is a mechanical compression device that basically does CPR. So 63% of those cardiac arrest calls receive the Lucas. It's not always indicated. Sometimes it doesn't work, and in as much as the patient morphology. Sometimes folks are just too big or too little for it to be used. But manual CPR, LMA, that's an airway. That's a laryngeal mask airway. It's really a quick airway that we can use, and it's gaining a lot of use across the whole EMS spectrum, and it's easy to do. The ETI is endotracheal intubation, which is a more definitive airway, but it's also more invasive. So you can see we're using LMAs more than we are the endotracheal, which I like. We're getting good response, and your outcomes are pretty good, or if not better, than the endotracheal. IVIO, 100% of those times we've gotten that established for our medication routes. The electrical charge across the heart, defibrillation, 13% of the time that was happening in our cardiac arrest calls. Epinephrine, which is adrenaline, used to stimulate the heart, 100% of the time in cardiac arrest. I didn't want to get too deep into this. This is called end tidal CO2. This gives us an estimation of our response to resuscitation. And initial end tidal, when we put this airway in, certain levels will indicate a better outcome. So those are monitored and tracked. To get them all documented is not necessary. We try and encourage that, but 30% of the time it was documented, but 63% of the time they do use that when they intubate with the LMA. These are calls since I started doing this. Now, these are ALS. Most of these are ALS. If these fall out for review, and it could be anything, but a lot of the times it's something to do with a medication. Was it the medication dosage, the route, the administration used that may have fallen into question? And I'm happy to say that all of those that have fallen out for review, in my follow-up, there's no untoward outcomes, and it was a simple explanation, and it could have been clerical, documentation wasn't there, so that's good. And I think too that part of the quality assurance that I do, if there's a problem, I always rely on the destination, the hospitals themselves. If they have an issue, they can reach out to me and track me down and say, hey, we got this patient and this happened. This slide will hopefully eventually go away. This is our COVID impact number of calls, which is a respiratory related call type. One thing that was of importance, I think, was June of 23. That's when we saw RSV. We hear about RSV all the time now, but we're seeing it in adults in June of 23. For one, it's way early. Two, it's in adults. So it really, thankfully, it didn't turn into anything other than just kind of a phenomenon that happened. Kind of a pie chart on the impressions of the types of calls: injury, pain, cardiac, weakness, falls, syncope, seizures. These impressions can come from either dispatch or what the medic puts into the report. Medications administered. This, again, since the advent of ALS, we're looking at these types of metric that includes certain dosages and routes of administration for all these different types of medications. And again, I just put that on a report. At any time, if anybody wants to talk more about these, just shoot me an email and I'd be happy to explain it. Procedures, likewise, IV starts. A lot of our calls result in an intravenous line being started. Glucose, assessment that could be secondary, primary, or trauma assessment. Placing these individuals on cardiac monitors. Doing actually 12 lead EKGs in the field. Again, another IV access, CPR. That LMA that I had talked about, that airway, this is iGel. This is a supraglottic airway. We're using a lot of these in lieu of intubation, endotracheal intubation. IO is another IV access, and then splinting. Some things are kind of interesting. If this is a slide that depicts the day of the week that we see the average number of calls. You can see for some reasons there's spikes on Tuesdays and Fridays. If you ask anybody without them seeing this slide, I would think, well, probably Saturdays or Sundays. But it's interesting that during the week that there's actually more calls on some of those days. Likewise with the hours of the day, another slide that depicts that. People going to work in the morning right around noon and then going home at night. And you can almost hear sirens sometimes in the morning and or in the evening. The slide's a little more involved again. What we had established when we started this ordinance way back in the day was that one of the requirements was that you had to acknowledge to Metro or the dispatch center within 60 seconds that you got the call. And then you had 10 minutes to get to the station and get your vehicle and then respond. And then from there, we were able to measure how long it took to get to the scene, how long they were on scene, and we could do the total time of the whole call, and including from start to leaving the hospital, all re-equipped and ready to go. Average age, again, this is kind of a nice breakdown. Average age of the calls that we've seen in fourth quarter was 36. Stays pretty consistent. We do look at, or I do look at, some of the responses, reasons or delays in responses are attributed to obviously weather and some other parameters that end up impacting. I'll explain that just a little bit when you see one of the other slides that I'll show you. Barriers to care, you can imagine once we get there, there's a lot of work to be done, just first to make the scene safe, but then also to render care is impeded sometimes because the patient's uncooperative, they're unconscious, we can't get to them. All manner of environmental and behavioral reasons can impact what we can do to the individual. You can see alcohol and drug use is, they're not in their right mind. They're very difficult sometimes to work with, and we're seeing a lot of that, and hopefully that someday we will be able to rectify that. But right now, drug and alcohol is a big problem wherever we go. Some of the call locations is kind of interesting. We've known that, especially heart attacks and things like that usually occur in the family home. But here's kind of a breakdown of the calls that we had in the fourth quarter, where they were at, more for interest than anything. Types of calls that have BLS and ALS. It wasn't that long ago where most of the calls were BLS. Now almost all the primary service areas have advanced life support providers responding to our calls, which is good. Dispositions, what happens to these patients? A lot of them are transferred, but the big percentage of all of our efforts, once we respond and we get there, that the patient will refuse transport. And the reasons why are too numerous to list, but it could be a pediatric patient or somebody just wanted to get checked out. But that's kind of consistent with what we see. And they can be a bit of an issue because we want to make sure that the patient's well educated as to why they're refusing service, and to do a little bit of a sales pitch to make sure that they get follow-up and appropriate care for whatever the problem may have been. Destination types, this slide has changed a little bit since we now have freestanding emergency departments. So most go to the destinations of the hospitals, the tertiary care centers, but a percentage since we've had the freestanding EDs, of which there are 2 now, and we still transfer to doctors' offices by ambulance. This is the county sheriffs, and part of this, what we did years ago, and we were having some concerns about coverage. We come up with an idea, why don't we train some of the sheriff's deputies as EMTs? And the sheriff bought in. It was great. It's a good idea. They're still out there, and they've made a big impact. Because I said a little bit ago, the first 120 seconds or so of an emergency situation is all BLS stuff. And we want to make sure that the scene is safe, airways open, bleeding is controlled. And the sheriff's deputies have been a great help in that regard. This is kind of that same slide that I'd had at the year end. This is for the quarter. Again, kind of the it's the response breakdown by category. And you can see again, Garrett's and Del Rapids, they do a lot of their business with transfers, a lot of assisted living centers and nursing home work that they do. Again, fourth quarter incident call like I'd had in the year end, pretty similar. And again, breakdown by category, and in each of the categories are different. It's a bar graph. You can still see that a lot of these are mostly transfers, which is part of EMS. And then here's a slide that if we look at the averages, again, based on our ordinance, dispatch to en route, and we look at en route to on scene, and then the total response times and the total call duration. The average here is a little confusing. This means that 90% of the time, it takes this long and that's including everything. That includes weather or any delay that may impact whatever category metric we're looking at. And this is our averages. So we're all within what we expect them to be with respect to the ordinance. So they're doing a great job there. This is the county sheriffs. I added that. You can see, their rubber's already on the road. So once if they're available, I don't know how many deputies that are EMTs now. It's well over a dozen, but they're able to respond assumingly quicker than anybody because the rubber's on the road. And so that's been a big help. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I don't know how long I took or if I
Perfect.
said too much or
No,
too
you're
little.
perfect.
All right. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to stammer through those.
Public comment on this presentation? All right. Commission, any questions?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
just wanted to say, thank you for being here this morning. I really do enjoy these annual reports, and as a first-year commission, I got quite a lot to learn, and I'll be spending this first year and ongoing doing that. And as you referenced, there's certainly no shortage of acronyms to learn. So, but I really appreciate you getting me up to speed on some of these issues. Is an area that really interests me, and I think we all take ambulance services for granted, but it takes a dedicated group of individuals to make it all happen. And I just want to thank you again for your service, and be very happy to get coffee with you sometime too. So
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Luther. All right, moving on. We got a bunch of smiling faces in the back of the room that are excited to see the next presentation. Annual presentation for Minnehaha County Emergency Management, Rural Ambulance, and Rural Fire Departments. Good morning, Maria.
Good morning, Commissioners. Excuse me, thank you for having me. Perfect. I can run this way, correct, okay. So my name is Maria Monkfold. I am with Minnehaha County Emergency Management. I am going to present to you the 2024 overview of emergency management. Then afterwards, I'll be turning it over to Rural Fire and Ambulance for them to do their presentation as well.
Did you give your name? I'm sorry, did I miss?
Yes, Maria Monkfold.
Thank you. Just for the record.
Does this set up as a PowerPoint? I just go down?
You just scroll.
Okay, sounds good.
That's a video.
Okay. Oh, I can make my eye strain. All right. The purpose of emergency management is to provide workable plans to keep the continuity of federal, state, and local government during time of disasters and extreme emergencies. Accordingly, the Emergency Management Office conducts hazard analysis and develops and updates plans for emergency management preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. Emergency management also has volunteer programs, as previously stated, but those programs are Police Reserve Program, our Fire Rescue Team, and our Dive Team. Our first group here is our Police Reserve Unit. This unit is made up out of 36 police Reserve officers that are certified through the state of South Dakota. They provide extra patrol for special events for law enforcement. The different law enforcement agencies that they partner with are Brandon PD, Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office, Sioux Falls PD, Game Fish and Parks, and the Highway Department. There is a command structure. We do have 1 captain, 2 lieutenants, 6 sergeants, and 25 officers currently. All of these individuals that are a part of our police reserve unit donate their hours and time, so it is all volunteer based. Last year in 2024, they had a total of 7,775 hours that they donated to the county and our citizens, which equates to about 8 hours a month for duty hours and then 3 hours of training a month as well. By the state, by the end of the year, every year, each individual has to at least minimum have a donation of 96 duty hours and 36 training hours. This past year, we started with a recruit class, but then we had to cancel it. We are always looking for volunteers. What the recruit class is they go starting January to May, 2 days a week, 2 nights a week, I should say. They train with all those agencies I mentioned previously, everything you can think of from defensive tactics, ethics, community policing, and they get certified in the state of South Dakota to be able to ride with our officers and assist them in whatever they may need. Our other unit that we have as a volunteer group is our rescue squad. Our rescue squad, currently we have 16 members and they are on an on-call basis. They have donated up to 1,792 hours last year in 2024. And that does include our training hours in there as well. They assist with search and rescue. They assist our local fire departments, and they also have water rescues. They are EMS trained, and also there's a few paramedics also on the team. They assist law enforcement, traffic control, and other services. They may assist them with generators or whatever is requested in order for them to go through that call for service and complete it. They are also part of our group for our severe weather spotter. So whenever we do get inclement weather, they do go out to certain locations on the county and give back feedback as to what they're seeing. Recently, we had an exercise on the 22nd. A part of that exercise, we had our rescue team, our dive team, Split Rock Fire came and was involved as well, and so was Lake County Emergency Management. This is a video, but it's not going to play, but it just kind of gave an overview of what was going on there. It was at Family Park. Their primary focus out of this exercise is that they focused on self-rescue techniques, solo rescue techniques, solo rescue with a sling, utilizing a backboard for rescues, and dive searches. This does highlight the importance of training, given that there's been already 3 ice rescues since January of 2025. So it was a good practice, and they got some new volunteers that are on their team that got some beneficial practice from this. Next, we have our dive team. Our dive team currently has 16 members. They assist Minnehaha County with evidence recovery, body recovery, property recovery, and again, they also assist with ice dives or non-ice dives. And they do work closely with the Sioux Falls Fire dive team. The Sioux Falls Fire is going to have a separated team, but currently we're kind of hand in hand until they get everyone certified and through. Other management services that we provide is resource allocation, communications, weather service liaison. We work closely with the National Weather Service and have monthly, if not more than that, meetings with them. Rural ambulance, they work closely with us and we work closely with them, and also rural fire. And then we are also that liaison between South Dakota Emergency Management and any of the state statutes that we need to follow and make sure that Minnehaha County is following those parameters as well. Any questions before I turn it over? All right.
Will we be hearing from rural ambulance or rural fire? You guys
Yes.
are coming up?
Yep.
Okay. Why don't we just make it, and
Okay.
take questions at the end then.
Sounds good, thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Harstead, President of the Minnehaha County Fire Chiefs Association. also fire chief up in Crooks. Here to talk about 2024 in the county as far as fire response goes. We came close to setting an all-time record for calls for service in the calendar year. 3,893, almost 4,000 calls handled by our departments. That's fire only. I'm sure the ambulance services, when they get up here, will talk about their responses. But if you may recall from last year, we opened the ranks of our membership to include the volunteer ambulance services in the county last year. So if you look at our membership overall, over 6,500 calls received by our members over the course of 2024. That's a lot when you consider that Sioux Falls Fire responded to 16,000. We were 6,000. There's a really big difference between the two agencies, 100% volunteer in the county. I've been doing this now for 25 years up in Crooks. It blows my mind that every year we can still find new types of calls to respond to. Just recently, Brandon Fire got to experience advancing a hand line with members of SWAT. They had never done that before. And in Crooks, a month or so ago, Crooks doesn't have any water to do water rescues, but we added a park a couple years ago with a pond in it. So the fire department has been preparing for that additional emergency. We had an ice rescue. It wasn't on the new pond, it was on the city lagoon. So it's always different. We learn new things all the time. But year over, we experienced about a 9% growth in call volume in 2024. That's one of the bigger jumps in the last 10 years, but it's fairly consistent with what's been going on. The call volume never seems to decrease as the population of the city and therefore the rest of the county increases constantly. Our call response never seems to go down. If I look at it from just Crooks in 25 years, when I joined in 2000, we had 40 calls. Last year we were over 160, so that's 400% growth in a 25-year span. Something we specialize in the county departments, doing more with less. More calls. Like I said, 9% increase 1 year over. More training requirements. There is a statute coming down from OSHA that is affecting all rural fire service across the United States, and it's going to require us to meet a lot of the same statutes standards that a career service would meet. So Sioux Falls has an amazing program to do physicals every year for their firefighters and train them on every little thing that's required. And that takes a significant time and money investment. And it's simply something that at the rural agencies is very hard to come by. So we are fighting back against that a little bit, but we'll see how that turns out throughout this year. More expensive equipment. The cost of all of our equipment with inflation and everything else the last couple of years, equipment prices have gone through the roof for us. I can speak firsthand. In Crooks, we're expected to take delivery of a new vehicle in July or August. And I can cheat. I work at Rosenbauer. We're building that fire truck. So we're getting a pretty good deal on it. It's still $425,000. And it is not fancy by any means. It is the basics that we need to serve our community. And insurance premiums. The insurance premiums in the last year have risen 12 to 15% for each of the departments. And again, that's a burden that we bear on our own. So less ability from the general folks. I mean, as the city of Sioux Falls continues to grow, it seems like our outlying communities in the county are transitioning to even more bedroom communities than they have been in the past. So there's less people, less community involvement, and finally, less funding. We see it in our fundraisers. Every department in this county does soup dinners and pancake feeds and dueling piano shows, and whatever else to help raise money. And it's getting harder and harder to find people to come to those things. So keeps us on our toes. I want to thank Commissioner Kipley. He has been a great liaison for us. He's been engaged with our meetings over the last couple of years. He has really been an asset. We appreciate all the help. A couple of things that I would like to work on in the coming year. We need to change up how we do our burn ban. A lot of counties across the state have added a rider, so to speak, on their burn ban, saying that if there's a red flag warning for the county, it's an automatic burn ban day. We have done a ton of education in our county as far as, especially in the rural areas, with people that want to, burn up their tree piles and burn their ditches and waterways and et cetera, that they are making the effort to notify us when those are happening so that we're aware of it. So they are to call the non-emergent number down at Metro Communications. They give us the notification that somebody's called in for a burn. They have been great in the last couple of years when somebody calls in on a red flag day and maybe pointing that out. But we've had a couple instances in the last year where we've had grass fires that run crazy. How dry it is out there, the drought conditions that we're experiencing. We haven't lost any structures to it, but if you look at just, earlier this week, the one that got away from them down by Yankton, there's been a couple of very large ones out West River, things that we're keeping a very close eye on. So that's something that we're going to work with Commissioner Kipley on and see if there's some ways that we can improve that process. Let's see. The way we're funded right now, all of the departments in our county are funded in 2 or 3 different ways, whether it be directly from a township. There is the county tax levy, and then most of our departments are in cities who help fund as well. But we have a couple of departments, mainly Renner and Lyons, who they're not in a city, so to speak. They're in a township, and so they don't have that funding source. And one of the things that we've looked at closely is the tax levy that the county puts on. It hasn't been changed since it was put in place way past my time back. So we want to explore some ways to help perhaps increase that to help offset some of this gain that we're seeing. Let's see. We really like the new structure at Metro Communications, with that being taken over by Sioux Falls Fire. There's been some bumps in the road, there's been some hiccups, but the communication that we receive, we have a committee that meets with them monthly to go over concerns, address issues, and it really has helped open doors to what's going on at that agency and helping our general membership get a better understanding of what's going on and how to improve it. So that's been a big help. The last thing I want to talk about is our mutual aid contract, and I talk about this every time that I'm here, and it's really, really important. That's why I keep bringing it up. Minnehaha County is unique, and I feel like because of the population that we have, the departments that we have, I feel like we have a spot as leadership in the state of South Dakota with volunteer fire departments. One of the ways that we've done that is it was established back in the late 60s, a mutual aid agreement. Basically a document that says, hey, all the departments in this county, we are here to help each other because we're all, we're a lot of bedroom communities. And if you get a call for a structure fire in Crooks at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday, there might be 2 or 3 people out of my 30 that are around to respond. But there's 9 of us that are up in Lyons, 7 miles away. And Lyons Fire Department, Renner Fire Department, Hartford Fire Department are all going to respond so that we can make sure that we have a coordinated effort and enough people to handle the situation. That is rare. That is rare. If you look around the state of South Dakota, that is extremely rare. You go out to Pennington County or up to Brown County, and they still charge. If a department comes over to help another department, somebody's getting a bill for it. We don't work that way. And one of the big things that we've done over the last year is we've expanded that mutual aid agreement because we recognize that there are a ton of border communities outside of our county, mainly in Iowa, Minnesota, Moody Lake, and McCook County, that don't have the resources or anything else to work in this. So we've expanded our county mutual aid agreement to make it more of a metro region agreement. So our mutual aid agreement expands out to Inwood and Larchwood, Hills, Beaver Creek, and Jasper, Trent, Chester, Montrose, Canastota, all the way down to Canton and Lennox to the south, to make a true collaborative effort. If something goes wrong, everybody knows that there's going to be resources on the road to help. And like I said, I'm really proud of that. That's something that doesn't exist anywhere else in this state. Anyway, that's about all I've got. If anybody has any questions for me, I'm happy to take them.
I have a question I really don't want to ask, but I want to know the answer to. Why would somebody go in a frozen lagoon?
That's a really great question.
Yeah.
I wish I had the answer to it.
Okay. Amazing. Alrighty. Any others? Okay, do we have one more?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
how are you all doing in terms of equipment? Are your volunteers properly equipped, or is there some room for improvement in that area?
There's always room for improvement. The state of South Dakota did a $5 million PPE, so personal protective equipment grant, over a year ago. So it was open to all departments. I will tell you that there are departments in the state that didn't ask for any money. I don't understand that. I can't imagine that every department in this state has everything that they need. But I can tell you that every department in this county asked for and received some funding for that. So that's our structural gear: hat, coat, pants, boots, gloves, helmets, just the bare essentials. So there was a significant amount of that $5 million that went directly into Minnehaha County. There are other grant programs out there. The feds, through FEMA, we still have the Fire Act grant that's available. That's getting a lot harder to apply for and receive than it used to be. But over the course of probably the last 10 to 15 years, $5 to $6 million of that has come into Minnehaha County for funding for equipment, trucks, gear, et cetera. So are we properly funded for equipment? That's a really hard bar to reach. Do we have what we need? I think we do. Is it the greatest stuff in the world? No, but we make it work. But there is always room for improvement.
What would you say the average age of your volunteers is? Are they aging out? Are they getting young people involved?
That's really dependent upon which department you go visit. If you looked at my department in Crooks, the Crooks community itself is a younger community in general. I believe the median age in Crooks right now is about 34. I'm the oldest guy in my service, and I look in the mirror and see my gray hair, but I don't feel old. But we have a young service in Crooks. Some of the other communities are not like that. So median age, it really varies greatly by agency.
One last question, I'll keep it short. Are there any barriers to entry? You had mentioned, or someone prior to you, increasing number of certifications and so on. Is there any help or support from the state or the county to
So
pay for some of those
the entry
certifications?
level, if you join a fire department, the entry level training to become a state certified firefighter, the County Chiefs Association actually pays and takes for that training. So instead of each individual agency relying on themselves to do that, we collectively, all the members of the association, we put together a class, usually once a year, sometimes twice a year, to train new firefighters. We pay the Chiefs Association, we pay the instructors, the state's fire marshal office comes down and tests them. We pay for all of that through some of our funding. So it's a very much a collaborative effort.
All right, do we have ambulance yet, or, okay.
Good morning, Minnehaha County Commission, Ryan Siddick, Del Rapids Ambulance. We're going to keep this short, but we're each going to take about a minute or so here. Del Rapids Ambulance has been, first want to thank you guys for all the increases in funding over the last couple of years. that has allowed us to finally get some pay in line that we needed to reimburse our EMTs as well as our paramedics for the time that they're committing to our ambulance service. That has been significant. Between 2020 and 2024, Del Rapids Ambulance has seen a nearly 50% increase in our call volume. I can't tell you how, I didn't think we'd ever break 500 calls. And we're last year finished at 621. We are almost running 2 calls a day in Del Rapids. At the end of January, we were pacing 700 for 2025. We are ungodly busy. I wish it would slow down. I hope it will slow down for everyone's sake. But we are been very busy up in Del Rapids on the ambulance. Staffing is our biggest concern. I think everyone feels the pinch in staffing continually yet everywhere. It's hard to find good quality staff for your services. We are lucky though. We have a handful of very competent providers, and I'm extremely proud of the care we deliver in our community and the way we take care of our patients. Our other big need in Del Rapids coming up is going to be new trucks. We have a 2009 and a 2011 ambulance. We are putting $10,000 to $15,000 a year into repairs on those trucks. A new ambulance is $300,000 plus at this point, and we don't have the cash to buy that. And so we are going to be trying to figure out the best way to maneuver that, come down the road here in the next year or two, to replace that truck. But that is going to be one of our bigger concerns, is how do we replace some equipment? Unfortunately, grants are wonderful to go after, but the two things that grants don't typically pay for, staffing and trucks. We just have a hard time finding grants to pay for those things. Outside of that, I'll let Humboldt go here. We are working, I should say quick too, we're working on a few grant projects. Curtis is going to wrap up with one that's specifically for Minnehaha County. But we're also working, Del Rapids is working with Sadaho on an interfacility transfer portal. That'll be a statewide portal to help to move patients around the state of South Dakota, so not just here in our area, but across the state. We're also working with the South Dakota Ambulance Association on some state legislation to deal with insurance reimbursements and whatnot. So we have a lot of projects that we are working on, not only on a local level, but also on a state level. So thank you guys for your time and your support. It's been wonderful.
Morning, Commissioners. Tim Even, Humboldt Fire and Ambulance Service. Humboldt Ambulance covers about the western third of Minnehaha County, as well as we get into the eastern portion of McCook County. Due to natural barriers, it's a little quicker for our ambulance to get to some of those locations. So we get into McCook County as well a little bit. Call volume for us for 2024, we were at 321 calls, about a 10% increase from the prior year, which 23 for us was significantly lower. I have no idea why. I wish it would have stayed that way, but we are also on the increase this year. If things continue as they are, as the end of last month, we'll be looking at well over 400 calls for service, which will blow out of the water anything that we've ever done for calls. Some of the things we did do this last year, we participated in an active shooter training in Humboldt with the Sheriff's Department. That was last summer. Also last summer, we did some mutual aid training with one of our out-of-county departments, Montrose. Participated with that, with those folks. This coming year, we're going to work with Parker, another department that we border, so we're going to have them folks up and do some mutual aid training with those. And we did participate in the countywide training that was out here at the west side of Sioux Falls last summer as well. The increased funding that we received from you folks was, we helped, as Ryan said, we tried to bump up the pay of some of our medics to try to get them back in line, probably where we're not quite to where we should be yet, but we're working on it. With that, I believe it was someone from the Sheriff's Department that spoke to the commission at one time. They said, once you get good people, you want to keep them. To try starting over with new folks is very difficult. So that's what we are trying to strive to do, is get some pay increase for some medics that deserve it. We also brought on another medic to help shore up some of our overtime pay. We're trying to, cut back on that. So with that, we did bring a new medic on that's supposed to be starting here next week, I believe it is. You folks have supported the ambulance service, but as well the fire departments. And I don't want you to forget those folks that they all run a rescue squad too. They don't collect any money for that. So I would hope you would continue to support the fire departments in that effort because the ambulances, anytime we go to another community, there's a fire department on scene already. So those folks are sorely needed as well. So also, I guess we're seeing more law enforcement needed on scenes. That's kind of the nature of some of our calls. It was, Dr. Luther said, times that we have to wait for law enforcement to clear a scene so we can even approach with our ambulance personnel. But another thing that Dr. Luther mentioned with some of the sheriff's department being equipped as EMTs, we did have a call where they were first on a scene of a cardiac case, early defibrillation, along with fire and rescue on scene and ambulance service. And I think it was probably 10 days later, saw that individual walking down Main Street. So the system works, but everybody's needed. So with that, I would like to thank you for dedicating March 15th. I believe it's going to be as an Irish Day. I'm half Irish, so I'm going to be looking forward to that. And with that, I'll turn it over to Curtis Nelson. Thanks for your support.
Morning, Curtis Nelson, Director Garrettson Ambulance. So I can echo kind of what Tim and what Ryan were saying as well. Garrettson, we're the smallest of the county services. We have the smallest area, the smallest agency, but yet we're seeing the same things. We were up almost 10% last year in our call volume, and we set a record for the third year in a row. We were just under 300 calls. We're on pace to blow that out again this year as well. So call volume is increasing. We're seeing a lot more mutual aid between agencies where one agency is already out and the next one has to come in. And so we have fewer calls in other places. So we tend to run a lot more mutual aid than the other services, which is fine because when we're out, somebody else is there to back us up too. So as Tim said, the system works. We've mentioned funding. We're very appreciative of the funding that increases we've had the last few years. That's made a big difference. We're still not where we need to be, but we're getting closer, and so we're happy about that. Along those lines, Ryan mentioned some of the grant programs that we've been working with. So the state of South Dakota Department of Health 2 years ago implemented several grant programs for EMS in the state. A couple of them were different equipment grants that we were able to receive some equipment, but there was one on the last one's on regionalization. And so they made grants available to agencies in the state to look at regionalization of services of EMS and kind of looking towards the future. So the three community ambulances in the county, Humboldt, Dells, and Garrettson, we came together. Garrettson's the lead agency on it, but we're working together. And so we were awarded a grant to study regionalization and to look at what does EMS in Minnehaha County and our surrounding area look like 5 years, 10 years down the road. Because the model that we have, honestly, we're not sure how sustainable that's going to be. With mix of volunteers and poorly paid staff, we can only keep that going for so long, especially with the increases in costs and increases in staffing challenges that we're seeing year after year. So we're wanting to take kind of a holistic look at what are some options, what are some steps we can start working towards now to set us up for the future. So there'll be more to come on that. We've been working with Commissioner Kipley on kind of what our plan is for that and having him involved in those discussions. So like I say, more to come. Hopefully we'll have more information by this time next year and some ideas, some things that we can present to the commission and to our cities and our townships and the rest of our agencies to look at what direction we want to go into and set us up for a sustainable future. So any questions?
Are we done with presentations? Okay. Public comment on any of these presentations? Commission, any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, I'll just make the comment, a few themes run through, and I think there's some symbolism of how we united these presentations, because I think there's good collaboration. I think we can't take that for granted, too. I think a couple of the speakers mentioned elsewhere in the state and elsewhere in the country, you get some kind of turf wars and petty rivalries, but we've got folks coming from law enforcement. We've got Sheriff's Office representative, emergency management. We've got fire. We've got ambulance, and then we a few call outs to Metro 911 and the infrastructure that those are also kind of part of the first responder team, if you will. So that spirit of collaboration and civic engagement, the volunteerism, especially in our rural fire departments, I get to see that firsthand. This has been one of my favorite liaison assignments, because once a month these guys get together and they truly know one another. It's not like they're just seeing each other once a year when they come in front of us. They're meeting on a daily basis, sometimes on the front lines of certain calls, but then also on a monthly basis as a leadership group. So it's fun to see that rotates around the county. So it's kind of fun excuse to get to other communities and join those guys for their collegiality and fraternity in the process as well. But yeah, I think that's just something we can't take for granted, and we have to lean into it. So some of these concepts around regionalization, I think that's something we're gonna have to lean into as well. So that takes some of our sister counties into account as well. I know T and Harrisburg just growing like gangbusters and trying to have equivalent fire service to their neighbor to the north, city of Sioux Falls, is just kind of apples and oranges. So how do we partner so some of our rural neighbors to the north might have better guidance for them? So seeing those mutual aid agreements and that in place, we just can't take it for granted. But thank you all for what you do every day, and I'm happy to keep the conversations going. I think those are a lot of constructive presentations today, with a few policy points around funding sources and burn ban issues. So lots of things that we can sink our teeth into and be working on together, but mainly a thank you today. So appreciate you guys.
Commissioner Bleinberg?
Thank you. I'm not sure who wants to try to address this, but I'm just curious with the increased, the theme was an increased number of calls across all the agencies. Just curious, in your opinion, are those calls appropriate calls for service? Is there any level of education, especially in the rural areas, that we need to do? Just wondering if you can give us maybe not a statistic, but just anecdotally.
Generally speaking, what I would call nuisance calls have dwindled significantly. We don't get sent on too many wild goose chases anymore. There's a lot of factors in that. I can speak directly from Crooks. We handle parts of Interstate 90 and 29. And we would get a call from someone having a medical emergency on the interstate, and they would say that they're at mile marker 88. Well, mile marker 88 is 2 miles north of the Renner Crooks exit. Easy. We drive up there. There's nobody anywhere near there. Well, now with Metro and the software that they have, they can triangulate where that cell phone is calling from. And even if someone says they're at mile marker 88, they can say, are you sure it's not 188? So a lot of that stuff has helped significantly. We will never get away from our, lift assists, and those to me you could classify them as a nuisance call, but they're still unnecessary. Somebody needs help. And we're here to give it.
Thank you.
Curious on mutual aid, is it automatic or is it by request?
Automatic and by request. So depending upon the call type, we have a lot of parameters set up automatically with dispatch and with Metro. So depending upon the call type, if it's a structure fire, you're getting the home department and the next two closest. If it's a grass fire, you're getting the home department at least and the next closest. It all depends on what it is and where it is. And a big thing that we've accomplished in the last year, working with Sioux Falls Fire, they have a couple of stations that are blocks, what I would consider, away from being outside the city limits of Sioux Falls. And once you get outside the city, that's not Sioux Falls Fire Rescue Response Area. But if it's a priority one type call, which is imminent life safety threat, instead of looking at, okay, it's Crooks's territory or it's Hartford's territory, they're looking at simply who's closest. They have GPS locating from those locations, and the dispatcher can say, okay, yep, we're going to send Crooks, but also Sioux Falls Station 11 is a mile away. we're going to send them two. And that's part of what our mutual aid agreement
Okay. So that's how
accomplishes.
it's determined?
Yep.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Anything else? All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you and your departments and all your volunteers. Yeah, it's amazing what goes on out there. All right, consider an abatement application recommended for denial by the Department of Equalization on parcel 14045 for the year 2024 property taxes, $98.10. We had a few of these a couple weeks ago, Chris. I asked you to come and talk to us.
Yep, Chris Lilla, Director of Equalization. Typically, whenever there's an abatement request filled out, we are required to process that regardless of anything. So, but with these here were kind of an en masse where a title company sent us a list of numerous parcels that the city had acquired. We had to send that list back, say we can't do a list, we need abatements. They sent them. We're gonna try and stave some of these off on these ones that we find that are not really relevant, like in this case here, where they're clearly not eligible to receive it because of state law. So we'll try and stave some of those off in the future if we can and see if they would be willing to rescind their paper document. However, in the interest of transparency and accountability, any other abatement that someone fills out, even if we know it's not going to move forward or be legal or have any merit or weight, again, somebody could walk in and say, I want an abatement on my house because I don't like that director, Chris Lilla. If he wants to fill out an abatement and request it, I have to process it. So again, we'll try and stave some of these off, but this one's pretty straightforward in codified law. An entity requesting an abatement has to own that property for 16 days or more of the month to qualify for that month. Otherwise, it's a full month or nothing on these. So they didn't possess it until December 20th. So that month is unabatable. So we're recommending denial.
And I agree with your philosophy. Joe Citizen comes in and says, I want an abatement. These have all been from one government entity, and it just
Correct.
seemed kind of
Frivolous.
silly. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right, public comments on this agenda item. Commission, question, actions? Commissioner Kipley had to recuse himself.
Make a motion to approve.
All right. Second. Motion and a second. Call the roll.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Heisey. Aye. Karski.
Aye. Motion carries. Consider a motion to authorize the chair to re-sign a joint powers force account agreement between Minnehaha County and the state of South Dakota for payment of federal aid relief funds due to June flooding. Good morning, Jacob.
Morning, Commissioners. Jacob Mars, Highway Department. This agreement was already signed once by the commission as stated. The state went back and looked at it. There was a provision in there that they overlooked the first time. They wanted to add it again. It just says the state won't pay us until they get paid. So that's the only change.
All righty. Public comment on this agenda item. Commission action.
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
Motion and a second. Comments? Call the roll.
Heisey.
Aye.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Consider bid results and award recommendation for project MC 2502 Southeast South Dakota County striping and authorized chair to sign an agreement with Sir Lines a Lot Traffic Control and Striping.
Commission, Jacob Mars again. We opened bids last week on a striping project. This is a project that we do with 16 other counties. We put the plans together in-house. We bid the project. All of the different counties are in the bid as alternates. And then all of the counties on their own follow through their own advertising schedule, and they can all award their own piece of this contract. It allows us to have a larger purchasing power so we can get lower prices. The low bid this year was Sir Lines a Lot. Sir Lines a Lot bought out Dakota Traffic Services and Traffic Solutions in the last year, and they both are now going under the name Sir Lines a Lot. So it's a local company that's working with us on this. And then Vogel Traffic Services, formerly they were Diamond Vogel. They've separated into a contractor and a paint business. We've used them in the past as well, and they were our second bid.
Okay. Public comment on this agenda item. So the total bid was $1,044,000 and the Minnehaha County portion is
89,443.25.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And our budget for this year was 130,000.
130,000. Yeah.
And our estimate was 110, somewhere around there.
Okay. Commission questions, action.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Call the roll.
Kipley.
Aye.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye. Motion carries. Consider a motion to approve issuance of a request for proposal for a campus master plan. Meredith, good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Meredith Jarko from the Commission Office. So before you today is a request for proposal for a downtown campus master plan. Looking for approval to issue that request for proposal. So I know we've been talking about this for quite some time. There's been building committee meetings. But just a very quick background. During the 2025 budget process, funds were budgeted to conduct a campus master plan. In past facilities planning and task forces that we've done, it was most recently identified in 2019 that the demand for services on the downtown campus would outgrow our current facilities by 2032. So with 2032 being only 7 years away, kind of reverse engineering it backwards, we need to start looking at the campus master planning process now so we can have some options so that by 2032 we are putting into motion to make sure that we're not out of space on this downtown campus. So we decided to look and focus mainly on the downtown campus. We have had, many different improvements across our county facilities in the past couple of years. Highway Department, there's a new juvenile detention center being built. And so this is a focus on the downtown campus because we can foresee that there will be some space constraints, especially because there are so many constituent-facing services that we offer out of this building, especially with the courthouse being right next door, as their needs increase as well. So attached to this agenda item is the RFP. If approved, the main components of the campus master plan will include a current facilities condition assessment, space and programming needs assessment, population growth and service needs analysis, stakeholder engagement, a phasing plan, and cost estimation and financial capacity. We are looking to pursue the RFP process instead of a bid process because of these main components of the study. It will allow the county to review proposals and determine the firm that would best align with our needs for the final campus master plan. So that is why we would prefer to use the use of competitive sealed bids over for an RFP instead of just the regular bid process. If approved today, the proposed deadline for submission is April 14th, 2025, with the intent to have a contract for the commission to approve in June of 2025. And dependent on timeline of the firm that is selected, we would hope to have that final plan presented in March of 2026 to the commission. And one other thing I will note, if approved today, there was a team that worked together to draft this RFP, and so I would suggest that the committee that reviews the bids and goes through that interview process might not be this full group of us because it is quite a few of us and a lot of schedules to manage, but I would suggest that it be comprised of some, if not all, of myself as the Assistant Commission Administrative Officer, the other project lead, Mark Krenz, who's the Facility Director, Carrie Deaver, Director of Human Resources, Eric Bogue, Chief Civil Deputy State's Attorney, Susan Beeman, our Finance and Budget Officer, Treasurer Chris Swanson, Carl Thones with the Circuit Court Administration, and Judge Robin Hellman. So I will stand by for questions, but again, just recommending approval to issue the RFP today.
Okay. Any public comment on this agenda item? Okay. Commission, questions, comments, action?
Mr. Chair, I guess I can just make the comment that I think everything growth-wise in Minnehaha County is going faster than expected. So a 2019 projection saying that we'd outgrow in 2032 is probably coming fast at us. So I think the time is right for this. And with that comment, I guess I would make a motion to approve the issuance of an RFP.
I would second that, and I just echo your comments, Commissioner Kipley. And I did have a chance to read through the proposal specifications, and I think the campus master plan is a good step towards devising long-term plans for the county. And I mean, we're all well aware that we're continuing to grow, and we're going to have to look at making changes. So.
Yeah. What's telling is the Minnehaha, one of your comments on your memo is that Minnehaha County is 130 years old, and 130 years ago they built the old courthouse. 65 years ago they started working on building this building. I mean, it's 65 years seems to be kind of the magic number here, but yeah, we have to be thinking the next 30 to 60 years out, and that's where we're at. And this building, part of the process is this building the right building? Is it serviceable? Can we fix what needs to be fixed, or do we start all over and we look at our entire campus and the growth of the state's attorney's office, all the attorneys in that office, and the public defender's office, and keeping those offices separate just because of the conflict that they have between them, inherent in what they do. Taking care of the citizens when they go to pay their taxes, and the treasurer and the register of deeds, and maintaining records, and there's a lot going on, and that's what this is all about. And we're 7 years now, and by the time we get something back, it'll be 6 years, and we're gonna have to move. We're gonna have to move to make decisions in that respect. So those are my comments. Anything else? I have a motion and a second. Call the roll.
Kipley.
Aye.
Heisey.
Aye.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye. Motion carries. Last item, a legislative update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Meredith Jarko with the Commission Office. Today is Legislative Day 31. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. A couple of important dates to note. Thursday, March 6th is the last day to move required delivery of bills or joint resolutions by a committee to the second house. And then following that, Monday, March 10th is the last day for a bill or joint resolution to pass both houses. So I believe the last time I was up here, I was talking a lot about crossover day and that deadline. And there have been, a few days of breathing room, and they're back at it again because they have to pass more things to meet these deadlines. Thursday, March 13th is Legislative Day 37. Then there will be about a 2-week break. And Monday, March 31st is Legislative Day 38, and that's just reserved for gubernatorial vetoes. So won't have a legislative update for those weeks as long as, nothing's happening, but we'll probably have a final legislative update just after that March 31st date to give a complete recap in case there are any vetoes that, we need to take into consideration. So I figured I would start this on a brighter note, and it's not included in this packet because it happened after the agenda was published. But Senate Bill 37, which was to repeal the sunset date on the 911 surcharge increase, that did pass the House 69-0, one excused. So that is great news. It will then be sent to the governor's desk for final signage. So that is something that I know has been top of mind for many counties to help fund those public service access points. So that is passed, which is good. In terms of property tax bills, Senate Bill 216, that is the governor's proposal. That has a hearing in committee tomorrow at 3 p.m. We were hoping that there, after the Senate committee, there was some discussion of working with the taxing districts to kind of come to a compromise on some of the issues that they had, because there was a lot of soft opposition from the taxing districts in that committee hearing. As of right now, there has not been a new amendment at all to Senate Bill 216, so it is moving ahead to the House committee tomorrow. As is, we may still see an amendment introduced before the end of the day, or maybe partway through tomorrow, but I know that SDACC was maybe kind of hoping that there would be something to address the cap on growth at 2%. But at this time, Senate Bill 216 is as it stands when it came out of the Senate committee and the Senate floor. So that one will be heard tomorrow at 3 p.m. Also, at that 3 p.m. time in committee, scroll down here. Senate Bill 191, which is to limit the annual valuation increases on owner-occupied single-family dwellings. This is being heard in that same committee tomorrow, and I know that there are some issues with that from an equalization and assessment standpoint. So those will both be heard tomorrow. And then another property tax bill, it has not yet been scheduled for committee hearing, but House Bill 1235, reduce the limit on the annual increases of property tax revenues payable to certain taxing districts and to subject school districts to a limit on property taxes collected in a year. That would reduce the levy increase maximum from 3% to 2.5%. So that is a bill that I am tracking, and the SDACC is also tracking. It was referred to Senate taxation. Again, not sure when that's going to be heard in committee. I'll be checking those hearing schedules to see on these property tax bills if there's ever any want to testify remotely in a committee or anything like that. Please just reach out to me and I can make sure I get you on the list. In addition, it's not on this spreadsheet because there was an update yesterday. House Bill 1052 prohibit the exercise of eminent domain for a pipeline that carries carbon oxide. I've mentioned before that a lot of the other pipeline bills were withdrawn or they kind of died. This is the one that is still moving ahead. It did pass the Senate State Affairs Committee, so it next then moves on to the Senate for a vote. So that is the kind of the main pipeline bill that is still alive and moving through the legislature. In addition, as I'm sure you all are aware, I will just touch on very quickly, the prison project at this point has been paused. The governor is looking to have a task force put together to really look into that and then have a special session to kind of address what the next steps are. I know that the prison project doesn't directly impact Minnehaha County, but keeping an eye on that just as they move through this next stage of figuring out what's next for that prison. And one final note, so with crossover day, there were a lot of killed bills. Many of the Hog House bills that were, simply just a title were killed, they were tabled, they were deferred to the 41st day. But there are still a handful of Hog House bills that made it out of their first chamber. So I will be monitoring all of those to see if they do eventually end up getting amended, or if they also die out in, ahead of these deadlines coming up. So I know that was a lot of stuff, but I will stand by for questions.
All right, any public comment on this agenda item? Okay, questions for Meredith?
Mr. Chair, I guess one clarification on your timelines and deadlines out there in the legislature. We said March 10th is the last day for a bill or joint resolution to pass both houses. But then we have that week remaining, that I can anticipate with this property tax world, we're end up with a conference committee and whatnot, so that could go past the 10th. So it's past both houses, but in different forms. Gets because there's commonalities in all three of those bills, so I could see that somehow leadership jumbling those into a conference committee or killing two and just having one vehicle to conference over. But so that could go into the second week of March, possibly.
Potentially.
Okay. But yeah, I guess we need somebody to amend it tomorrow at 3 p.m. just so that it doesn't pass in the same form, because I don't find these property tax bills to be in line with the way counties look at how we do assessed values. I think we've kind of got a populist movement that gets mad when they get their assessment in the mail, and I got my assessment in the mail, and my assessed value on my home has doubled since 2020 when I moved into it, so I get the sticker shock that goes with that. But I think it's an uphill climb to educate people that that's just the valuation, the assessed value, and equalized with all of your neighbors and everyone across the county, and that's multiplied by a levy rate. And the anecdote I use is, if it would make you feel better, we could cut everybody's assessed value in half, but then the algebra would just say you double the levy rate and we're gonna get our taxes. So I think we can play a lot of games with the algebra involved. But at the end of the day, I think the message I'll probably be reaching out to legislators with is, if our goal is owner-occupied, lowering the burden on owner-occupied, the mechanism we already have for that is that 85% rate that applies to the assessed value. Does that need to be 82 or 79 or 76? Pick a number, and I think that's the way to ratchet down the burden on owner-occupied. But we should also be transparent that if we're gonna ratchet down on owner-occupied, it's cost shifting to ag and commercial. So I think those are things that I just don't get a sense that the legislature has thought all of those things through. And kind of the classic conservative response to the populace would be Chesterton's fence. So there's a fence. We've got a governor now that's a rancher that understands that the fence is there for a reason, and you don't take down the fence until you understand why it was there in the first place. So if we don't understand our assessed value process, even after having a summer study on the topic of how we do assessed values, it just loses some faith in the process that the legislature has going. With less than 2 weeks to play, they're going to come up with a compromise here. So I guess I'm just putting some of my reservations on the record that they've got to come to some compromise on some of these bills, and I understand the populist impulse that they're going for and wanting to deal with assessed values. But I think we've got good leadership, at least in Minnehaha County, with Chris Lilla is doing a fair job of equalizing. Then it's our burden to set a levy rate that goes with it, and we get to our property tax. So anyway, I think we've got some work yet to do on property taxes, and I think the counties need to have our voices heard, because I think we're the closest people to it and have the most experience in this book of business. So that's my comment / question, maybe in there somewhere.
I will say, just to kind of follow up on that, I do know that there are some assessors who are planning to testify tomorrow at 3 p.m. on 216 and 191. So even from the, not necessarily the property tax revenue side of things, but the how we assess things and how those bills would impact that.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up, to follow up on Commissioner Kipley's comments. This is such a fun time of year. I'm sure we're all having lots of conversations with people about how much they love their property taxes and their assessments. And I would always point out that, as Commissioner Kipley said, it's not necessarily the assessment or the levy that, if you're concerned, really what you would want to be paying attention to is our budget, because that's the end goal. And so if anybody has that passion to really look at how we can lower taxes or the amount of money that a homeowner is paying, I would just say, help us take a look at our budget and help us take a look at the community services that we are statutorily required to provide. And since we all know, I think it's 70%-ish of our budget goes to public safety, and I think 90%-ish of our budget is meeting statutory requirements from the state. There's an increased population growth that is just requiring us to continue to grow, and none of us are happy about increasing people's property taxes, and would probably all welcome any constructive criticism and where we think we could save that money.
Yeah, I agree. You know, I look at 191, and I don't want to offend anyone, but the county doesn't set property values, the market does. We just have to equalize them so that they're fair across the county. To limit increases, it would be like saying, well, you can't sell your house for more than 3% of what you paid for it next year if you decide, because, well, that's totally messing with the market and the way the system works. So artificial limits on increases aren't the answer, but I do want to express my gratitude to the legislature on the passing of Senate Bill 37. That's the one that we use, the money that's generated by the 911 service charge that's on your phones goes to pay the Metro Communications staff and to pay that operation. When they passed that law 3 years ago with the increase, I think it was 50 cents or something like that.
55, I think.
Yeah. And now they extended that. That is saving $1 million in property taxes in Minnehaha County. We got to address the underlying expense, not the amount of the revenue. It's the expenses that have to be addressed. And Senate Bill 37 helps us to address property taxes and to keep things down. It's a shift, but it is away from property taxes. So just an expression of gratitude to the legislature on passage of Senate Bill 37. So, any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I'll make one brief comment, and I'll have to admit I didn't know how property taxes worked last year, but being liaison to our equalization department, Mr. Clisla, after many, many conversations and looking into this more deeply during my short tenure, many of the comments made just now have been very accurate, and I think Commissioner Jen Bleinberg said it well, that it really comes down to the budget at the end of the day. That's really the driving force, and I consider myself very much a fiscal conservative, and if there's anything we can do at the county level, to cut expenditures, and definitely be very happy to look into that. Our new governor, Larry Roden, said as much. He actually mentioned Doge. I know it's gaining a lot of national attention of late, and I think we can always take that spirit whenever it comes to funding, whether it be at the county level, the school board, and the city, and just look out for the taxpayer. So that's all.
All right. Moving on to public comment. We have 30 minutes set aside for public comment. Any individual gets 5 minutes. Nobody's rushing the podium, so I assume we don't have public comment. Moving on to commission liaison reports. Commissioner Bleinberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Last week, I maybe was a little preoccupied, and I failed to mention that on our consent agenda for the February 25 meeting, the Minnehaha County Human Services Community Engagement Division had a few examples of the type of work that division is engaged in on a regular basis, and the work that they do, which is primarily just to connect individuals and families who are homeless or who are at risk of homelessness with safe and affordable housing options and supportive services. So I know the commissioners all read, and some of the staff reads the consent agenda, but just for anybody who's paying attention, that's worth going back and taking a look at the couple of examples that they provided, just to give us an idea of some of the work that the county has been busy with.
All righty.
Mr. Chair, I know I have mentioned this at a prior meeting, but since it's happening right now and tomorrow, I wanted to bring it up again. The Sioux Empire Water Festival is happening both today and tomorrow, March 4th and 5th, at USF from 9 in the morning to 2 p.m. Our very own Conservation District will be in attendance amongst many other related organizations. There'll be hundreds of grade schoolers, so I'm told, and other guests in attendance. And I'm going to try to stop by this afternoon if I'm able to, and if not, I'll stop by tomorrow and maybe learn a thing or two. So.
All right. One update I have is if you look on the schedule of meetings, Wednesday, March 19th, 2 weeks from tomorrow, is the Sioux Metro Growth Alliance annual meeting at the Country Club of Sioux Falls. I encourage commission attendance if you can make it to that. There's probably going to be a couple hundred people at it. It's a good meeting, a great way to find out what's happening in all the rural areas, not only in Minnehaha County, but in the four-county area. So put that on your calendar if you can make that. I encourage your attendance. All right. Non-action commission discussion. Okay. Moving on then to look for a motion to enter executive session for the purposes of South Dakota Codified Law 125-2, 134, and 6.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We will meet in the room next door. Thank you, everybody.